What's going on, everyone? TM24 here, and we are back with some more Marvel Snap content. Now, if you're just now finding the channel, welcome. I hope you find this video entertaining and informative as we are talking about, well, a deck that is, honestly, I don't know what to think of it. I'm trying to use a couple cards that never see a whole lot of play in Dazzler and Shanna, so that was the idea, was building around them. Obviously, we had to throw in a few other cards like Kazar, Ultron, Doctor Doom, Patriot, but we'll get to that in a second. So, if you're new here, welcome. I hope you give this video a shot. If you're a returning viewer, I really do appreciate your support. My llama here, who's got a new home, he appreciates your support as well. But let's get into the video here. So, as I said, this deck, we're trying to make use of Shanna and Dazzler. Two cards that I haven't seen played a whole lot, and I mean, it's not hard to see why, right? They don't seem to be particularly strong, but I do think there's some potential there. So I tried to throw together a little something that I feel would work for them, and we had okay success. We were about 50%, definitely some big wins, but there were a lot of games that it just didn't all come together. You'll see here kind of some of the different play lines we can take, but let's talk about the deck first, right? So first up, we've got 3 1-drops. We've got Ant-Man, we've got Squirrel Girl, and we have Nightcrawler. So Ant-Man, I mean, he's one of the better 1-drops out there. Him getting the buff when the lane is full is huge, and that's something that we are looking to do, especially with Dazzler in, in this deck. Squirrel Girl, she's going to be great at kind of filling those lanes as well. Hopefully getting Dazzler off, hopefully getting Ant-Man off, things like that. Next up is Nightcrawler. Now, Nightcrawler's been really, really strong in this deck, and I think a lot of it comes from his ability to move. Yes, he's buffed by, by Kazar, but really what Nightcrawler does is he allows us to move to potentially a different location so that our Ultron can fill the rest of the lanes as we did here. So Nightcrawler has been huge in this deck. Our 2-drops, we've got 2 of them. One is Mojo, again, another card that doesn't see a whole ton of play. And then the other one is Zabu. So Mojo has been pretty solid in this deck. I will say when you get him down, your opponent is almost never filling that lane. So what we've got to do is make sure that we've got enough power there, even without his effect going off. Zabu is in there for the discounts because we do have 4 4-drops. So being able to get one of them down early is huge. Our only 3-drop is Patriot, and Patriot, of course, is going to hit the squirrels, is going to hit all the Ultron drones, and going to hit the Doombots of Doctor Doom if that's the route we end up going. Now, on to the 4-drops. Now, this is where we're really trying to make this deck work. We'd already talked about Dazzler. We need to fill our whole board in order for her to go off and be that 4/10. So that's what we're trying to do. When we can get her down, she seems really, really strong. Kazar is there to buff all of our 1-drops, potentially those drones, but we do have quite a few 1-drops in just Squirrel Girl, Nightcrawler, and Ant-Man alone. Now, I've included Rescue in this list as well. Again, another card you might not see a whole lot of play in, but the reason that we put Rescue in is because she is a 4/9, and sometimes you just need that little bit of extra power, and Rescue can provide that. The next one in is Shanna, and Shanna's going to put a 1-drop at each of the locations. So again, she's great at filling that board, which is what we're trying to do. All of those 1-drops potentially are going to be buffed by Kazar, so again, more value out of him. And then last are our 2 6-drops, Doctor Doom and Ultron. And I mean, we know what we're doing with them. We are filling the board as much as we can. We don't always pick up Ultron, so having Doctor Doom as an option to, make sure you're putting 1 piece at each lane can be huge. Now, let's talk about how we actually win with this deck. Obviously, we're going wide and hoping they're being buffed. We can play games like this one that you're currently seeing, which is essentially just a Patriot-style game. So there is that line of play where you can play Patriot on 3. On 4, you can play Kazar. On 5, you're probably looking at maybe a Rescue or maybe a 1-drop. And then 6 is Ultron, and, you're just filled up with drones that are all buffed by Patriot and Kazar. Now, the other line that we can kind of take here is trying to make sure that we get those Dazzlers, that Rescue off as well. So, I mean, the idea is to go wide, but we get extra value from our Dazzler, from our Rescue, if we can get them buffed up. Ultron is another solid source of power in terms of him being 8 power himself. So what we try to do is, if we can get an Ant-Man down and then Zabu early, it makes it easy to go with one of our 4 drops. Typically, any of them are fine. I like to hold Shanna just because she is a bit unpredictable, putting those 1 drops out. An Ebony Maw can really ruin your plan. Putting out a 0 that negates your next play can be a little bit tough as well. But that's typically why I like to hold her. We already talked about, Rescue and all that. So Rescue is that source of power. But that is kind of the other option, right? Zabu on 2, a 4 drop on 3, on 4. You can go another 4 drop. You can go Dazzler and a Nightcrawler, or Dazzler and a Squirrel Girl. You really start picking out what you're going to do kind of in the middle turns. On turn 3 and 4, you really start deciding which way you're going to look to play this. As you can see in this game, we had a little bit of help. Titan is reducing the cost of those 6 drops. But, we're in a good position. They can't really play anything into the Altar of Death unless they're looking for it to get destroyed. And luckily, we can get cards there. We've already got Kazar out. So Ultron's going to be able to come down. We're going to fill up Fist Tower and the Altar of Death. Not that it really matters for Fist Tower. We're never going to outpace that Infinite. But as you can see here, we're also buffing that Ant-Man. And that's going to be huge, because we're going to end up getting a very, very close W here. But as you can see, we've got 16 power in, 16 power up in Titan. It'd be really, really tough for them to pull that back. They almost did. They brought back 15, but as you can see, we still had more than enough to actually get that win. Next up here, we've got Mojo World. That's going to be a location we're never going to have any problems filling. We don't have a 1-drop, which is okay. A lot of the times I was kind of passing on 1 anyway. But then 2, we're able to get Zabu down. And Zabu will then allow us to play that Kazar or that Dazzler on turn 3. We did pick up Nightcrawler as well. So we can always get Crawler plus, plus 1 of those on 4. So we've kind of got these turns mapped out already. We've got a 3 for 3. We've got a 3 and a 1 for 4. We've already got Ultron as well, so we know that Dazzler can be 10 power, so we feel like we're in a pretty good spot here. Ultimately, we do decide to go with Dazzler and get her onto a separate lane. We know we are probably going to fill every single lane, so we have no problem just tossing her down. And, 10 power for 4, in this case 3, is a ton. So a lot of the times, if you get her with a couple of 1-drops, she's going to win you that lane. Hence why I wanted to try her out. Wanted to see if I could make her work. Along with Shanna, because these are cool cards that just, I don't know if they just don't have the support right now, or they're just not strong compared to the meta, but I wanted to give them a shot. So we got our Dazzler down, and we're just waiting on our opponent to make a play. Wolverine makes me think it could potentially be a Galactus deck or a Destroy style deck. And seeing the Time Stone, I was a little bit confused. I didn't think, this would be a Thanos deck we were going to play against, but it ended up okay. Their Carnage does come through at 6, fairly strong play. Wolverine gets buffed again, and they are in a pretty good spot here. Turn 4 is up, and we've got a couple of options here. We can go Kazar and Nightcrawler just to get rid of Vormir. We don't hate that. It allows us to play there, but we have other options as well. As you can see, we're thinking about holding that Nightcrawler because, we don't even necessarily have to play in Vormir to get power there. We've got Dr. Doom. We've got Ultron. So we aren't too worried about getting power there or getting rid of, that location's effect. Turn 5 comes up, and it's time to make a move. This is nice because we can get Shanna down, and yes, she's going to be destroyed, so we lose 4 power there, but she's actually also throwing out, 3 other 1-drops. So she's putting a ton of power on the board, even without her, staying on the board herself. So that's why we feel okay making this play, and then it allows us to put Mojo into Vormir as well. So Zabu giving us the discount allows us to play Shanna and get Mojo down, and we feel like we're in a solid spot here. They come through with a Power Stone and Death. a really solid play. Our one drops end up being Iceman, Nova, and Rocket Raccoon. So pretty, I don't know what you call it, pretty basic, pretty standard one drops there. So we're looking at, you know, we added 8 extra power thanks to, you know, Kazar's buff there, and we can still get Ultron down. Now they're up, and we know, you know, we're obviously going to play in the Mojo world. We're going to get those drones into those other locations. They're going to be buffed. So we're adding 8 to Mojo world, 4 to Vormir, and then another 4 to that last location, getting us to 11, 8, and then 17. So as of right now, we aren't winning that Mojo world, but also it forces them to actually have to play on it. And that's what can be tough, because a lot of these decks turn towards 5 and 6. They don't have a ton of good plays in terms of spreading out their power, where with this deck, you definitely can. They end up playing just a Devil Dino, and because we took Mojo World and we had enough at our other location, we end up getting another big dub against a Thanos-style Destroy deck. So, again, another victory that they probably didn't see coming. This might be the last one, or maybe I've got one more after this, but I'll walk you through both of them or this one either way. So Washington, D.C. is actually pretty good for us. We've got Squirrel Girl ready to go, but looking at our hand, I kind of want to hold off just because I know that I could fill up our board quickly with Shanna and Squirrel Girl if we need to. We do have Patriot as well, so he seems like a perfect play here because we can get those squirrels out and get them buffed up. They end up playing a Psylocke, and I start thinking Mr. Negative, but Super Scroll comes out. Wasn't expecting that, and that's the second game in a row that I ran into someone playing Super Scroll, so a little bit odd because you don't see a ton of him either. But no worries, we end up coming back with Kazar, so we've got Patriot and Kazar down, and we look like we're just going with basically a standard, standard Patriot style deck. But here's where we've got a decision to make. We can try and start filling the board, or we can put a bit of power with maybe Dazzler and then try and fill it the next turn. We've got a ton of one drops, so we've got no problem getting power out there. It's just how we're going to go about doing this. We decide to go with Dazzler and Nightcrawler. Well, we pull that Nightcrawler back, and we're thinking about Squirrel Girl. Ultimately, we do end up going with Squirrel Girl. So Dazzler comes out, Squirrel Girl comes down. We're going to put 2 squirrels at the other locations. They're going to be even more buffed in Washington, D.C. because of the location and because of Patriot. We hit Ultron here, but not a big deal because we can still fill every location, making sure our Dazzler goes off. All we got to do is play Ant-Man and Nightcrawler. It's just a matter of making sure we put these at the right spots. They end up snapping here, and we end up getting our Nightcrawler and Ant-Man down, and then we're just waiting for Shanna to go off. So Shanna comes through, she puts down Blade, Human Torch, and Zero. So 4 power from Shanna, plus 4 from Blade, plus 4 from Zero, plus 3 from Human Torch is just absolutely insane. That's 15 power packed into one card. Yes, of course, the buff is there from Kazar, but still, that's a ton of power. We do get a little bit lucky that Zola hit Shuri instead of Black Panther, but that's a win that we're going to take all day. Another big dub. Now, this is the last one that I've got for y'all. Hell's Kitchen comes through, which is actually good because we've got a couple one drops, and we'd like to have them in our hand, even if we're not sure if we're going to play them quite yet. They come through with a Nightcrawler of their own. New York comes up, and we start formulating a plan here. We see that we've got Patriot. We see that we've got Ultron. So this can be a Patriot-style game for us. It's just a matter of making sure we put these cards in the right spots. Having New York is great because we can kind of put them anywhere and then always move them to New York on turn 6. So we've got Patriot ready to go. And we even picked up Kazar. So the play line of going with a Patriot, Kazar, in this case, Rescue, Ultron, just filling up the rest of the board with those drones. We get a ton of power from Rescue. what I'm doing here is I'm trying to make sure I play on only one location because I do not want to have priority. So you see that I initially went to play on Monster Metropolis, but if possible, I'd rather them have priority so that if they played something like a Killmonger, that my cards would end up being okay because Ultron would come through after. So I'm trying to make sure that I don't take priority here. I want them to go first. Yes, we risk potentially a Cosmo, but haven't seen a ton of Cosmo out lately, so honestly not too worried about it. Here we get rescued down into that middle lane on New York because we want to set up for that Ultron play on turn 6. They play Doctor Strange, and actually that's a really nice play with Kraven. Doctor Strange pulling all 3 of them over into that Monster Metropolis lane. We get our rescue down, and we've already got our game plan set. We move Patriot and Kazar over, and we get Ultron down. Now it's just a matter of seeing if we've got enough power out there. Unfortunately, we ended up having priority, I believe. Yeah, so we end up going first here, but we get a ton of power out there. Everything's moved to that center lane. Rescue does get buffed. We've got 22 in that center lane, and then we've got 16 in Hell's Kitchen and 28 in Monster Metropolis before their turn. So we've got a ton of power out there, and we feel like we're in a pretty good spot. Ultimately, they only play Vulture and Okoye, so not a big play there. They do move everything into New York as well. Kraven is being massively buffed, and he ends up getting up to 16 power. They win New York, but we win the game. So yeah, just a couple final words about this deck. I was trying to use some of these lesser used cards in Dazzler and Shanna and maybe even Rescue, and honestly I was a little bit surprised by the results. This deck ended up being fairly solid. I didn't really go down any ranks. I kind of stayed the same, maybe gained a few cubes, but overall I think it's more of a fun deck to play than a super competitive one. But I'd love to know what you guys think. If you think there's any cards that you'd switch out for others, please feel free to put that in the comments below. And if you've hung around until now, I really do appreciate the support. If you haven't subscribed or liked, now would be a really good time to do that. But until next time, have some fun.